Hello, everyone. Welcome to the recent webinar on Indian Dairy Outlook and International Business Opportunities from Yacht Brokerage. I'm thrilled to extend a warm welcome to our distinguished guest joining us. It is truly an honor to have each of you here as we delve into the topic. Today, we are privileged to have Kevin Bellamy, an international dairy expert and an investor, Rahul Kumarji, who will be joining us shortly. He's COO of Parag Milk Foods, and he's among a very few individuals um, who has led a cooperative and international dairy business in India and now running a private dairy company. And Sanjay Srivastava is with us. He is a go-to-market strategist who has led the successful entry of a global cheese giant in India. With them, through the next 2 hours, we will explore the outlook of Indian dairy and opportunities for international business. Whether you are here to deepen your understanding of the subject matter or seek practical insights to apply in your professional endeavors, we are confident you'll find today's discussion incredibly enriching. Let's talk about the event flow first. We will have 4 presentations and followed by a roundtable discussion. And before we start, here are some housekeeping rules. We basically have 2 rules. Let's make this session an interactive one. So please keep posting your questions in the chat box. We will try to take all of them during the presentations or during the roundtable discussion. In case of any internet issues, we will make sure that we join on the same link. Internet problems can happen. So without any further ado, let's extend our warm virtual welcome to our distinguished speakers and start with our first presentation. Kevin, over to you.
Thank you, Prashant. Just let me share my screen here. And, just for a second. So let me just pull it up. Can you see my screen okay, Prashant?
Yes. Not as of now. It seems like a black screen.
Let me just try that. Give me 1 second. Can you see the screen now?
Not as of now.
All right, I'll just for this. Working fine a second ago, as you saw. Why is that not showing?
I can see the unshared now. I can see your calendar.
You can see my calendar. Okay.
Yeah. Now I can see the unshared version of the PPT.
That's better. Okay. Sorry about that. It's now back on. So let me just reshare that. And apologies for the interruption. So hopefully you can see the presentation on full screen now.
Yes.
That's great. So thanks, Prashant. Sorry about the technical hitch for a second there. Let me first introduce myself. My name's Kevin Bellamy. I worked in the dairy industry in the United Kingdom, currently based in the Netherlands. I worked setting up an international trade association called GDP, a global dairy platform. And for the my last 10 years of my career, I worked at Rabobank and headed up Dutch Agribank, headed up the dairy activities there. So I've got a fairly long experience in dairy, but similar to a lot of people, I haven't really had a lot of experience of India. I had a vague understanding of India based on listening to speakers like Prashant and people like R.S. Sodhi at conferences. It looked a million miles away from the industry I'd been involved in for most of my career, largely cut off from the rest of the world's dairy industry. Pretty high trade barriers, very little trade, very few deals to be done as a banker, and therefore a really passing interest. More of a developing market for NGOs and tree huggers than people like myself who wanted to be involved in the commercial world. Yeah, but current trends are changing that. And what I'm hoping to convince you of in the next 20 minutes or so is that India is just too big to ignore, particularly if you're in the dairy industry. First of all, it's the world's biggest milk producing country, world's biggest milk field. It produces a quarter of all the world's milk. It has 330 million bovine animals, that's the buffaloes and cows. And just as a comparison, USA has about 95 million bovine animals, and that includes all of the beef cattle. And you won't find many beef cattle in India. So India is by far away the biggest dairy sector in the world. There are about 70 to 80 million dairy farmers. Difficult to put the exact number there because there's a large informal sector. Typically, herd sizes are 3 to 5 cows or buffaloes, and only 25% of the milk in India goes down a formal chain. But there's another view of India. India is already the world's 5th biggest economy. In 15 years, the OECD suggests that it's going to be the 2nd biggest economy. So by 2037, 2nd biggest economy in the world. It has a GDP of $3.25 trillion. And that's growing at 7% a year. In 2003, it actually grew at 8.4% a year. So by the end of the decade, it's going to overtake the USA as the world's 2nd biggest middle class economy. Over a third of the population live in cities, and that's growing at 68 million per year. So the city population in India is growing by the UK population each year. And it's dramatically young, the average age in India is 28. So when you go there, it's got a population that's got huge expectations and optimism for the future. And important for the dairy sector, 50% of the population is vegetarian. It's impossible and that's because of the Hindu belief. So it's impossible to feed India without dairy. And let's look at some of the facts behind those claims. These are the OECD predictions for major economies in the world, and you can see that India is outstripping the world's big economies really through for the next 40 years. Now, the GDP per capita in India is still relatively small. It's somewhere between $2,000 and $3,000 per person, but that's going to continue to grow over the next 40 years. And India is going to become a really important market for consumers and for consumer products. That age profile, if you look at the top section there, you can see that about 40% of the population are under the age of 25. And that makes a real difference. If you look at the working population, the 2 lines on this graph here are India and China has peaked. The number of people working in China is going to continue to fall in their working population as their population gets older. India will peak around 2030, and will have the highest share in the world of working age population. And that's making a real difference to the economy. So these shapes at the bottom right-hand side here show that back in 2005, only about 8% of the households in India were in the upper mid or high income brackets. By 2018, that was about 1 in 4, and by 2030, that will be half of the households in India will be in that higher end bracket, and that's really what's driving that middle class consumer economy. If you look at the other demand drivers, then there's been really over the last 10 years a huge uptake in things like mobile phone and data usage. So in 2014, somewhere around 15% of the population had a mobile phone. It's now well over 60% of the population. At the same time, data costs are coming down. That's driving a huge growth in digital payments. So whereas the vast majority of the population 10 years ago didn't have access to financial services, they now have all of those services by phone. Farmers have access to services. The dairy companies have access to farmers, all driven by this connectivity. In fact, I was in Delhi the other day, and even this girl who was entrepreneurially getting into cleaning windshields at traffic lights hadn't quite grown up enough to reach them all yet. She was accepting Google Pay from her patrons. So it makes a real difference, and that's driving a change in the dairy sector. So whereas farmers used to sell their milk to the dealer at the end of the road, who probably cheated them in some way and then adulterated the milk on the way to the dairy to make more money out of it, instead dairies are making real efforts to have connections to their suppliers, and that's not only improving the economy and the farmers' well-being from financial point of view, but also improving the milk quality in the market, and that's going to be really important over the next 10 years or so. So let's look at another reason why, as an international player, you shouldn't ignore the Indian dairy industry. This is Rabobank's medium-term forecast for this decade, and it shows growth in the dairy sectors around the world. If you look at where growth comes from in the dairy sector, of course, there's two drivers. One is population growth, and the other is increase in per capita consumption. And the economic growth that India is seeing will increase people's disposable incomes, and they're going to spend more of a proportion of that income on dairy, and that's going to drive dairy growth in India. So if you want to find growth in the world's dairy industry, if you want to grow your business, then you really have to go towards the subcontinent. And looking at the growth in the formal sector, that 25% of the market which passes through processors, has really been growing much faster over the last couple of years, driven by the pandemic, of course. People want safe products, the need for convenience, urbanization, westernization of lifestyles. People no longer want to do what Prashant's mom, or at least Prashant's mom's servants had to do, which was buy milk from a neighbor, make cheese and curd, or milk the cow themselves and make cheese and curd in their own kitchen. They want convenience. So the formal market in the traditional dairy products, things like paneer, which is a type of cottage cheese, and curd is really growing at well over 20% annually at the moment. And then there's added value products entering the market as dairy technology picks up, as people have got more disposable income. Products like UHT milks, flavored milks, ice creams, infant formulas, all growing at a pace that's similar, well above 20% a year. And that's going to continue over the next decade or so as people continue to get richer. And then, if you look at where the detail of that, this is really being driven by entrepreneurial dairy, new capital entering the market, new ideas entering the market, new companies entering the market, which are really driving some of these added value products, which are going to gain market share over the next decade or so. These slides will be circulated after the call, so there's probably more detail than we're going through now, but it at least puts some of the details in your hands after the call. Another reason why I think international dairy players really need to look at India is, we're all striving every day to reduce the dairy sector's greenhouse gas emissions. We all know that it's a problem that is penalising the dairy sector in developed markets, and those 330 million bovines that are living in India all produce as much methane as a high-yielding Holstein Friesian living in Europe or America. But with a quarter of the yield, that means that the carbon load per kilogram of milk is 4 times as high from India. And it's a huge industry, a quarter of the world's milk. It's an Achilles heel for us as a global dairy sector, and one that will allow our detractors to keep pointing us as a cause of global warming. So we need to collaborate with India. We need to be there to help their industry reduce the climate footprint. So let's summarize that. A lot of detail on this slide, but basically it says dairy is an important food sector in India. It's 4% of the entire GDP, so it's really important to the government. 23% of all household consumption, household grocery sales are dairy. So it's really important as a fast-moving consumer good. The sector is rapidly professionalizing and growing. It needs to in order to keep up with demand. And that's also increasing the EBITDAs and the profitability due to those added value products which are coming into the market to serve those city consumers. We've got an improving infrastructure due to that private investment that's coming in, and that's improving the quality of products. It's a popular sector with government. It gets a lot of government support, particularly to support farmers. Remember those 80 to 90 million dairy farmers. And remember, it's an election year, so lots of subsidies, lots of tariff protection to ensure imports don't creep into market. It's a priority sector for lending. So if you're a foreign bank and you go there, then you're required to lend into these priority sectors, and dairy is one of those. Dairy farming is one of those. So it's a well-served and popular sector with government, and universally amongst the Indian population, it's seen as a healthy and important part of the diet. So, having worked in Europe and America for the last 10 years with all of the detractors and all of the people trying to get us to drink alternative milks, and worried about animal welfare and the environment, those worries are seen in a different way in India. The dairy industry needs to grow in India in order to improve the nutritional status and in order to meet demand. So it's a popular sector to be in. So how do you enter the Indian dairy sector? If you're an international player, how do you get in? Well, first and foremost, the elephant in the room is that it has really high tariff barriers and protectionism. Ever since independence in 1947, India has protected its dairy industry, originally because it would have had a balance of payments problem if it allowed large volumes of dairy to come in. Average tariffs are somewhere between 30 and 60%. And really very difficult to overcome those. We all know that Europe, US, New Zealand, everybody is striving for a free trade agreement with India, and the dairy nations are striving to have dairy in there. In an election year, I think everyone is going to have to wait quite a long time. I wouldn't hold your breath on that. Import volumes are relatively small. There is trade with India in milk powder and occasionally butter, but they are very much to either deal with surpluses where India exports onto the world market or shortages in the market when those happen. They're strategic trade rather than regular trade. That's beginning to change. When we talk to Indian processors now, a lot more of them are looking at whether there's opportunities to export, particularly to the India diaspora. I noticed that Amul, a big Indian dairy company, this week has announced it's going to invest in a fluid milk business with Michigan milk producers in the US. So there's interest from India to be engaged in overseas markets. And just mentioning co-ops there, like a lot of people, before I started to work and look at India, I thought the co-ops ran everything in India. people tend to think of India being dominated by large co-ops. Most of us have heard of Amul. Perhaps some of us have heard of Mother Dairy. There are a number of other large co-ops. They tend to be on a state basis. They tend to be focused on the basic products. And then they're fairly heavily politicized. They tend to pay subsidies, try and keep farmers sweet, particularly in for politicians, local politicians. And, perhaps my view was right. Perhaps for years, co-ops have been dominant, but that picture is changing too. That professionalization of the industry that I've spoken about has seen many private dairy companies prosper. A lot of entrepreneurs who've come back into the industry, having made money elsewhere, and are entering and developing those value-added segments that we spoke about. And those private players collectively have now grown to a size where they process more milk through the formal sector than the co-ops do. So we're seeing the formal sector continue to grow, and we're seeing the entrepreneurial presence really outstrip the co-ops in what they're processing. So, what are the potential routes for entering into India? Well, there's several routes you could look at. First of all, imports are possible. Import products produced outside India. Players like Arla, you'll find Arla products on the shelves in the supermarkets in India. And they do that by just importing, paying the duty, passing that on to the consumer. And there are consumers and high-end retailers who are looking for very high-quality products. Milk quality in India has been a long-term problem. Adulteration has been a long-term problem. Most people in India wouldn't drink milk without boiling it at least once, if not twice. So getting high-quality products, if you've got a higher disposable income, it becomes an important issue, particularly if you've got kids and you want to protect them. So there is a market for imported goods. Second route in would be to engage in foreign direct investment. A lot of those small entrepreneurial businesses are looking for investment to grow, to grab market share. A lot of market share to be grabbed, of course, and there's the opportunity to invest equity, not only to get an equity return, but to supply advice and technical support into those businesses and to help them prosper and become a partner in a larger business within the market. The example there I'd give is someone like Danone. Danone have always wanted to be in India. They've had a couple of major, well-publicized failed attempts to get into India. But their recent entry into India has been through investing, I think, about 25 million in a startup called Epigamia. It's a high-end drinking yogurt. It was booming in the market. It's had a little more difficulty this year, I think, but they're helping Epigamia grow in the market as a high-end yogurt that's appealing to those more prosperous consumers. Third way would be to partner with a Indian company on a more strategic basis with a big equity share and to start a joint venture of some kind. The easy to recognize one is Schreiber Foods, who partnered quite a long time ago now with a company called Dynamics. They've had a long-term, very successful partnership in India, supplying quality milk into some of the big international players who are there. A more recent example is Bell, who partnered with an Indian biscuit-making company called Britannia, who are more a bakery and biscuit company, but they have a reasonably large dairy division. They partnered famously with Fonterra in the past. They've partnered with Danone in the past. I had an involvement. Danone had an involvement there, but they've now partnered with Bell to make cheese within the Indian market. Hard cheese is one of the things growing from a pretty small base, but becoming more popular in supermarkets. The fourth way of getting in would be to buy companies outright. If you look at Lactalis, they've taken the view that they can buy companies in India and develop a what I'd call a string of pearls approach. They bought Tiramula in the south. They've bought a company called Anik Industries, which is northwest. They bought Probant, which is a dairy company in the west, and eventually, I guess they'll form all of these pearls in the market into a single entity, and it'll become Lactalis India. And they've launched their local products, the President cheeses, etc., within the Indian market, and are being successful. And then the fifth one I thought of, and I couldn't really think of a good example of anybody who's done this, but I'm sure it's taken place, is to buddy up with one of the multinational companies who are already there. So someone like a Unilever, Hindustan Unilever are there. They've got a big nutritional formula business. They own the Horlicks brand. They're producing ice creams, although I think they're just about to sell that business off. You've got Abbott there, who are in the formula and medical nutrition business. You've got people like Mondelez and Barry Callebaut, who are producing chocolates. If you can find some synergistic way to help their businesses within India and ride on their supply chains, that's perhaps another easy way into the market. So I think there's a number of ways that have been successfully demonstrated as ways into this market. There's equally some big failures, which I know that Prashant might touch on in a second, but I think the Indian market is opening up. It's becoming more international. People are more willing to talk to international players, and people realize they're going to need help in order to grow and meet the coming demand. A couple of final points. Don't be surprised if the price of entry is quite high. High growth and high margins drives high valuations, of course. So listed companies in India tend to trade in double-digit EBITDA multiples. So share prices regularly up around the 15, 16 times EBITDA in terms of enterprise value. And if you look at transactions, then in Europe, a dairy company would probably trade at 8 to 10 times EBITDA. Don't be surprised if the discussion in India starts at multiples of revenue rather than multiples of EBITDA. So companies have been trading as high as 2 times revenue. I think we're coming off the back of a bit of a bubble in terms of venture capital investment that has been going in there. People have been trying to grab market share and not necessarily looking at the profitability of what they're buying. Some of that's beginning to fall out. You've had some fallout of startups in terms of failures, and people are beginning to get a bit more realistic. But I think 1.2, 1.5 times revenue is still the going rate in the market. And but hey, you're paying for the opportunity and the growth that brings. You've just got to be a little bit more careful on what you're looking at. So just to summarize what we learned, well, my experience of India is offers strong growth for the winners in the market. If you make the right choice, then you can make a lot of money in a growth market that's very dynamic, very exciting to be in, and it's, as I started off by saying, too big for international companies to now ignore. A lot of focus at the moment on East Africa, but the East African market is, I think, behind the Indian market in terms of its development, and not so many opportunities there. I think the important thing that I've learned is you've got to choose the right local partner. You've got to have a strong local partner in the market to work with, someone who knows what they're doing, and let them do the heavy lifting. If you look at India, it's 76th in the world's corruption index. That doesn't mean it's the worst by any means, but it's well below European or US standards. So you need somebody who knows their way around the local market and can do deals on your behalf. I think quality is going to win through in the Indian market. Adulteration of milk quality has been a major problem in India, much bigger than the problem they had in China. And I think people are looking as their disposable incomes rise to get a better quality product, not just for themselves, but in a young market for all their children, of course. And people are really focused on that. I don't think you get premiums for quality. I think what you do is you get more market share. People flock towards your brand, but they're probably not willing to pay a premium for it. So quality will win through in the end. And the other big piece of advice is that Indian culture is very different from Western cultures. The flavors, the product profiles, the way that things are marketed, way people see things is very different. So you need that local partnership to understand the culture. And I think it's also a long-term game. I think the market will continue to grow for the next 20 to 30 years. And I think those companies that get in at the ground floor and then focus on slow and steady progress will win through in the end. So happy to have the discussion with anybody that wants to know more. Hopefully there's more in the slides, but in the meantime, thank you, Prashant, again for inviting me to present. And I hope it's been useful. I'll hand back to you.
Thanks a lot, Kevin. It was really an interesting presentation. Gives a very good foundation for the session as well. Now, actually, I would go through a shorter presentation, just continuing from what Kevin has just shared about the few of the challenges that businesses face when they are entering a different geography. I would not just talk about the businesses entering into India, but I would also talk about some of the Indian businesses which are trying to go global. So just a second. I hope you're able to see my screen now. While talking about
yes, we can.
While talking about few of the pros about India, I think that is pretty evident. Is we are the leading milk producer in the world. Second is we are 100% self-sufficient, and that can be a boon and can also be a very big challenge for India. Every time India tries to export something, the prices immediately fluctuate within the country. We have been an exporter, but we have only been an exporter of skim milk powder or some fats when we had some subsidies coming from the government. We are a rapidly growing market, and that is an extremely big pro for the country. But now when we talk about the problems, we are largely an informal but market but we are very formalizing very quickly. We have been pretty protective and politically sensitive, and it works both ways. Businesses entering into India and also businesses which are trying to export. We have seen instances in the past where a pen stroke challenge has been the biggest problem, where government intervenes to stop import or rather stop exports from the country. Given our farm sizes are very small, securing good quality milk is a very big challenge. High failure rate of Western businesses that Kevin has already discussed. But after my presentation, we would have two extremely good presenters who would talk about how they have been actually successful in ensuring that their businesses have been successful when they were trying to enter the market. And the last point is market is still maturing, and that is actually a very good pro as well. Now talking about some of the nuanced challenges that we see. Trade protectionism that I have already talked about, and Kevin also talked about during his presentation, that when we think about the protectionism, there is a duty that trade tariff that a company has to pay when they are trying to export their product within the country, within India, and generally it stands somewhere around 30%. Now, regulations are pretty complex. One of the recent instances has been where the FSSAI took really long to ensure what quality and veterinary certifications are required by the exporters when they are trying to export product into India, and that has caused a significant amount of commotion among the enthusiasts who were trying to enter the Indian market. Also, one of the biggest challenges that we see is the varied condition among states. So when you see one Indian state, that might be completely different, geography-wise, temperature-wise, climate-wise, cultural nuance-wise. That also creates a bit of a problem for the businesses when they are trying to see India. You see fierce competition, despite the organized sector only being approximately 30% of the country's handling 30% of the country's milk, but there's a fierce competition. Finding a local partner, as also Kevin mentioned, is a very big challenge to ensure that you have a really good partner that you partner with. Revenues can be extremely thin. Margins in Europe and margins in India can be very different. When you think about liquid milk, margins are wafer thin. So generally, a lot of businesses generally do not make enough margins when they are selling just liquid milk, and that's why they need to think about the valorization of milk, their milk better. Um, Entry into India or entry outside India is a long haul process. So when you are trying to enter a new market, you cannot just go with a 6 month strategy or 1 year strategy. This is where you have to think of a strategy that you're going to play out for not just for 6 months, but at least for 2 years to 5 years. When talking about India, milk quality is a challenge. Credit assurance is a challenge when you are trading with India. A lot of time I have talked to businesses who feel they do not feel secure enough when regarding their finances when trading into India, because they also feel arbitration is a very big challenge. If they get into a conflict, how and where this can be resolved without any without them being them seeing an unfair play. And all in all, I personally feel India is a pretty translucent market for international businesses trying to come to India and also for Indian businesses going outwards. Data, like access to data is very difficult. Information comes out once in a year, and that too in form of annual milk production. And if you have to see more nuanced numbers, it is becoming very difficult. Businesses cannot plan better for their exports from India. For example, butter was a very excellent example from 2022 when India over exported and the prices were pretty high. If businesses would have been aware of the numbers, export numbers on time, a lot of businesses could have planned better their strategy for supplying their product into the market on time. Now, some examples from the market. One Indian business that is trying to go global, Amul. This is like recent news. Amul has partnered with Michigan Milk Producers Association to launch Taste of India in US. We wish them very good luck. When we talk about the ingredients, we have seen significant, like some major companies that have been exporting to Western world or even to Southeast Asia from India. And among them, like I see Paras, Parag and other companies which have done fabulously well. And that is one of the model because they are working on a very high value ingredient. Talking about the global businesses, Lactalis is there, which has done fabulously well. Bell has done fabulously well, and Savencia, like they have always played an underdog. You do not hear about them a lot, but they are doing significantly well when it comes to cheese market. A business that has seen challenge among many, Fonterra is a very prominent example where finding a right partner was the challenge. Recent entrants, when we see Novenly has entered in partnership with Heritage, launching high value yogurt, a very premium product. So that is the way, as Kevin also mentioned, like valorizing on your milk best is the way forward. But all in all, I feel French businesses have been extremely successful in cracking the Indian market. Despite we have one business from US, Schreiber Dynamics, that has done fabulously well, but all in all, French businesses have been far more successful other than American or their European counterparts. So that is all from me. And with this, I would close my presentation and would like to invite Rahul sir to talk about his about the Indian dairy outlook in the short and the long term.
Yeah, Prashant, thank you
Over
very
to you,
much.
sir.
Thank you very much. Would you be able to share my presentation from your side?
I can do that, sir. Yes.
Yeah, please do that.
Just a second, sir. I hope you are able to see the screen.
Yes, yes. Okay. So, Prashant, thank you very
can
much.
tell me whenever I need to.
Yeah. I'll tell you when to change the slide. So,
Yeah.
Thank you very much, and good morning, good afternoon to all the participants. I was listening to Kevin's presentation. It was quite elaborate, and I would say that he has covered mostly all the points what we all participants need to know. And after that, Prashant also has really hit the nails in terms of identifying the issues and opportunities and whatever success stories what we have in India by the foreign players. So I would not take much time. Can you change the slide, please? Yeah. So it's basically the recap of what Kevin has highlighted. But just to give you some highlights of this, as we know that India is the largest producer of the milk, everybody knows that, and I think it will be for next decades and decades. So that is very clear. We have milk as the largest agriculture crop. The combined value of wheat, rice, and other crops, they are smaller than milk. So it's a why I wanted to highlight that this is a very important from agriculture ecosystem point of view in terms of Indian dairy is concerned, because approximately 90 million farmers or 100 million farmers are involved. It has a lot of socio-economic effect on the Indian rural society. It has very good what you call it livelihood option for the millions and millions of poor people. So it has a lot of socio-economic impact on the overall dairy business in India. So this is very important for us to know that this plays a very significant role. That's why a lot of government policies and subsidies are also after effect of this nature of the business. We can say that our CAGR of the milk production in last 20 years is close to about 6%. So it's a very healthy rate of growth continuously for last 2 decades. And we are every 15 years, we are doubling our milk production. And this will continue or it will not continue. That time will tell. There are a lot of challenges which I will come a little bit later on. But obviously this will be a great agriculture output of the country as far dairy is concerned. If you see the latest data what government of India has published is about 228 to 230 million metric ton of milk, which is about 23% of the global milk production. So we are about 1/4 of the total milk production in the world. And in next 10 years, the total growth what is going to come in the entire world dairy, it would be 50% will come from India. So in future also India is going to play a very important role. And after 10 years, this 23% will almost become 33%. So 1/3 of the milk of global milk production after 10 years will be from India. Of course, this has some rider in terms of whether will be able to produce milk the way we are talking about. There are a lot of challenges. So Kevin has already briefed about the business is totally towards unorganized sector, but the beauty is that there is a good rate of conversion from unorganized to organized, and that's what the growth rate is coming up. Very visible. We have organized sector is only 30% of the total milk which is coming to the in the system for the market, which is going to 6 to 7%, and there is a huge gap. So the gap is the opportunity and gap is the business. That's what all the Indian dairies and even the foreign players, they are eyeing on that. That India was very closed dairy economy till 1991 when the Indian economy got liberalized. After that, dairy industry was open to the private sector. So private sector was not very prominent till 1991. So last 30 years, only the private sector has entered into India, and Cyber Dynamics and lot of private dairy players, they have entered into Heritage and Tirumala and all the dairies in the north and south and west. They started after liberalization, that is after 1991. So, but now there a lot of investment has gone into from the private sector, and now today private sector is going much faster than the cooperative sector. So this is also very important that now the things are quite in the quite open economy. The private sector is quite going in spite of lot of subsidies from government to cooperatives and lot of protection also in terms of export or import of the milk and milk products towards in the favor of cooperatives. Okay, so cooperatives, they get a lot of subsidies, and as we know that it is very important that whosoever does business in India, the own milk procurement, the control on the procurement is very important. And whosoever has tried that, they can come to India because the market is very good, but they don't have any system of own milk procurement, the control on the procurement system, they are going to fail, or they have failed, whether it's an Indian company or any foreign company. So this is very important because the production system is so scattered. Until you have the control on that in terms of quality, in terms of consistency, in terms of reliability of the source of the suppliers, in terms of loyalty, in terms of trust, in terms of kind of relationship with the farmers, if not there, then I think the major chunk of the business is lost, and nobody will be able to succeed in Indian dairy. That is very important. And whosoever has succeeded, like Lactalis, they have understood this, and they collect all the milk their own. So this is very important for all of us. We have also, and Prashant has mentioned this, we have to balance between fresh milk and value-added business. India, basically, 60% of the milk is consumed as a fresh milk. When I say fresh milk, it's a fresh milk in pouch, which is very, very simplest form of consuming milk, and which has a shelf life of only 2 days, or curd or yogurt, what we call it. So basically, this is 60% of the market. Amul, which is the largest dairy company, dairy cooperative in country, they also sell about 60%. The business comes from fresh milk. Only 40% comes from value added. So if somebody thinks that we have to enter into India with the only value added milk, I think that is a recipe for disaster. If we have to be customize ourselves to understand what is the total market product mix is what Indian consumer is consuming. So that has a large chunk of business as a fresh milk. So we have to sell fresh milk, though Prashant was telling it has a very, very wafer thin profitability, but that is the fact that we have to accept, but we have to be in that market. Until as you have fresh milk in your portfolio, even the value added business will not be that easy, because it is fresh milk plays a very important role in terms of entering your brand into the household. The brand loyalty comes because of fresh milk and curd, and after that the people start using value added milk products from the same brand. So strategically, from branding point of view also, this is very important that you are part of the household consumption in form of fresh milk, though it has a very low profitability. If some company misses this very finer point, it makes a lot of trouble for that company to continue. So we must understand the importance of fresh milk category in Indian dairy market, which is about volume, which is about 50% of the total market. Okay, if we talk about the in value terms, because volume terms it's 60% of the fresh milk. Next slide, please. Yeah, this is basically just to demonstrate how the milk flows in India. I've taken a data of 210 million metric ton basis, which is about 1 year back data. But just to understand, I think this will be sufficient. The total milk production, as I said, is about 230 million metric ton, but 2 years back it was 210 million metric ton. So if we see how the milk flows in India, so the total milk production is about 210 million metric ton, or you can add 10% more. But about 40% milk is retained by the farmers, or it is consumed at the rural level. Why I'm giving you this data? Because sometime in Western mindset, it is there that India produces 210 million metric ton. You multiply it by €0.5 or $0.5 per liter of milk, and that is the market we are talking about. And that becomes a very, very wrong assumptions and wrong basis to at least assess the market. So we must know how the milk flows and how the market is valued. So when we talk about 210 billion metric ton, 40% milk is retained by the farmers, because 90 million farmers or their family, which is multiplied by 4, they also consume milk. So they consume milk. Even in the rural system, there are a lot of people who are doing other activities but not producing milk, so they also consume milk. So what I mean to say that about 40% milk is consumed where it is produced without any value addition, without any selling or in the package form and all those things. So this is very important to know. So milk available for the market comes about 60%, which is about 126 million metric ton. You can add 10% because data is at 210. Out of this 126, it is very important to understand. See, the large chunk of business is still unorganized sector. When we say unorganized sector, it means that in the cities, the milk is sold as loose milk, or in the sweet shop, people are making sweets and those sweets are sold in loose form, or they're making some curd or lassi or maybe some loose paneer, which is Indian cottage cheese. So that takes a different a route, which is basically unorganized sector. So when we talk about organized sector, only 45 million metric ton or maybe 50 million metric ton milk is routed through organized sector, which is consisting of both private and cooperative. Now, within that organized sector, today cooperative is handling bit more, lesser milk than private. So if you divide it by 45, then 24 million metric ton is handled by private sector, and cooperative is handling about 21 million metric ton. So basically, this is the way milk is flowing. But the highlight of this is that the major shift is happening from unorganized sector to organized sector. Organized sector, private sector is growing much faster than cooperative sector, and it will keep growing. And private sector, as Kevin has shown, lot of private sector in terms of their EBITDA, in terms of their revenue, in terms of their profitability, in terms of their all other financial performance, it's growing. It's growing. The investment is also done. There's a lot of activities happening in private sector because the business is being created by converting from unorganized sector to organized sector. Of course, cooperatives are also growing, but not growing at that rate because of so many reasons, including political reasons and then efficiencies and other legacy issues what all over world cooperatives are facing. So that's not a very typical to Indian condition. Okay, so this is what is overall overall picture of India milk flow, which gives a very clear idea what exactly the market is, and that market is not very small, but at least it gives you the clear picture of the market. It's not 240 million, 210 million metric ton multiplied by 50 rupees or half a euro or 60 dollar cent, whatever it is. So that gives you a little bit clear picture about the market. You can go next slide, please. Yeah. Now coming to the real agenda of this topic today is the international business, and what is our when we are talking about international business, it's basically 2, 3, 4, 5 things what we have been discussing. Whether we have export potential, import potential, people can invest in India, or if they want to invest in India, what are the formats available to invest? What is our learnings with the previous people have when they've come to India? Some people are really established themselves. Some people are still struggling. Some people have come and gone. They really want to come again. There are a lot of other issues in terms of government policies and trade barriers and all those things we'll discuss there. So if we take our exports to outside world from India, it's a negligible. The total export market, global export market of dairy products is $63 billion. Today, India has total $300 million. It may be 300, 400, depending on the season, depending on the year, where sometime, government policies are favorable. There is a lot of stocks in the country. People, they export. Next year, when there's a shortage, the government will not allow export. And in next year, government will give some state governments will give government subsidies to export. So it's not a consistent, figures what you can see, but average, you have $300 million export, which is less than 1%. Though we are having 23% of the total milk production of the globe, our exports are less than 1%. Exactly, it is about 0.4 or 0.56%. And that also it is happening to Indians outside, Indian diaspora outside India. This is what we are talking about. We are not talking about export of a very versatile or very diversified business of export. And mainly it is also consists of commodity. So SMP, butter oil, maybe some other products. I was going through the export data for from India. So you can imagine that there are 3 countries which are constituting about 46% of India dairy export. And incidentally, Bangladesh, which is just nearby to India, their dairy export is number 1. In fact, out of 46, I think around 15 to 20% is only Bangladesh. And then rest 2 countries and then other countries, you have most of the exports. So this is not a very diversified, very versatile, customers we have all across the world. So exports is also, first of all, the quantity is very limited, and even reach is also very limited. So we have to see that how we can capitalize this, because we have less quantity and very less reach also. As I just mentioned, that we have no export policy as a Indian dairy business. The way the government should have some export policy, that how to support export, how to have consistent policy in export, because in export, apart from the rates and quality, the reliability is very important. The relationship is very important. The customer who is buying our product should be confident that every year I will get from India, which is not possible today, because there is no export policy from government of India. It fluctuates very fast with looking to the domestic market, especially cooperative or government dairies. So this is very big issue, which has to be sorted out. As I told you, inconsistency. We have trade barriers. Sometimes government will give subsidy, sometimes it will not give subsidy. Export subsidies are there, or sometimes it will be complete ban, that you cannot export anything, dairy products. So these are the very serious issues in terms of the global level policies concerned at India, from India, government of India. I think we have mentioned several times the quality standards. We have to be very careful. I think the top 2-3 reasons, the quality is one of the very important bottlenecks, I would say, or hindrance to export in terms of our phytosanitary conditions or overall quality. I would say, even the largest players, like if I talk about Amul or I talk about Hudson. Amul is the largest cooperative in India with $6.3 billion business. I talk about Hudson, which is just Kevin sold about $798 million. It is about close to $1 billion company. They also could not find good market for export. It's not that good companies or big companies, they have some expertise to produce at that quality, to design the product for the export worthiness, or to find the clients which can be their customer. So basically, it's a overall situation is not very positive. Even the top companies, they don't have a very big chunk of export business under their portfolio. Just to demonstrate that once leaders demonstrate, the others follow, and the ecosystem becomes more and more fine-tuned, so that the overall industry gets the benefit. This is what my point is, that even the largest players also, they don't have much export business in their portfolio. We have issues like antibiotics. This comes under quality, aflatoxin, heavy metals, bacterial counts. So these are the issues which are, I'm not saying this is impossible to solve. We have done in Lactalis, when I was working with Lactalis, we have done a lot of things on antibiotics, aflatoxin, and all this thing. But a concentrated effort is needed if we really want to become export-worthy dairy business in India. Otherwise, it won't work. Let's be honest about it. We also don't have global products. When we want to export, I'm not talking about only to Indians, Indian products to Indian, as or commodity for some countries. But when we talk about export, we have to design some products which are basically used by or consumed by the Western population. So we don't have products like cheese or maybe some kind of value-added powder or protein derivatives which are not in place. So our R&D, our product design, our product development specific to export is not in place. We want to export what we have. Okay, so this is also is a bottleneck, because our eating habits, our products are totally different what other people are using in outside market. Another big issue which in export is that cost of production. When I say issues, there has to be some action plan to sort it out. This is what my intention, to raise some issues. Export market is big. India, because of milk availability, it has a big potential to export. But these are the issues which has to be sorted out, so that we can become a good export country for the dairy products. Cost of production is also very high. We talk about largest milk producing country, but our cost is also not very competitive as compared to rest of the countries. Today, if you see our milk rates to the farmers is almost the same as Europe or maybe US, is about 32 euro cent or 35 dollar cent or something like that. So it's not very cost competent country in terms of dairy production, and this is a very serious issue because of that the Indian government has to close the market so that no cheaper or competitive cost efficient product can enter into India in spite of some duties and all. So this is a real issue in India, that our cost of production is very high because of several reasons. We can take 1 hour to understand that lower productivity, fragmented herd size, feeding habits, no control on the breeding and AI activities and all. There are a lot of issues out there. So this is but the fact is that we have very poor productivity of the animals, very fragmented herd size, so cost of economics is not there, and we have big issues in terms of maintaining our costs. So even if you see, just like this example, this latest example, last World Dairy Trade, I think has happened in March second week. SMP was auctioned at 2,517 per dollar per metric ton, and India today the domestic price is 2,770. And that also is not a very good price. Farmers are not very happy with this price. They think that SMP is very cheap in India, and they should have got more price, because this is less than their cost of production. It means our production cost is so high that forget about exporting and competing with the world SMP prices. Even in India also, selling at this rate, people are not happy because they are not making any money. What I mean to say is completely closes the export market because of the price barrier, because we cannot export because our cost of production is so high. This I'm talking about SMP, only commodity. Okay, so basically this is what a big issue which has to be sorted out. Then another thing you just mentioned, Prashant, we cannot export, but there is possibility that people start making products outside India. Okay, this is also one way of looking into the this thing. Of course, the Indian milk will not be used, but at least some companies will be able to cater those market in terms of business. So there is a US, you have a company like Nanak or Deep Milk. Amul, 10 years back when I was in Amul, we set up one plant of paneer in New Jersey. And recently, Amul has tied up with Michigan Milk Producers Association for making some liquid milk and all. So there are some Indian products like in 10 years back, the total Indian population in US was close to 4 million. Now today it must be 5 million or 5.5 million or whatever it is, 5 million. So it's a big population in US and in other some countries also. So whether people can make the products there for the Indian people rather than exporting from here, and then we have duties and delay and shelf life issues and all this thing. Another thing is also very important, which I think is very important, that we are not giving enough focus on sustainability and environmental issues. And Kevin was working on that, talking on that in terms of number of cows and buffaloes we have, the kind of methane gas we generate. And as such, Indian dairies, they don't have much focus on that, which I think should be there at the top priority, so that this should not become a bottleneck, because this is going to hamper our this could be a barrier, because we are not taking care of the environment, sustainability, carbon footprints and all these things. So we have to do this. It may be a little bit long term, but even if we sort out all the other factors which I have mentioned above, if you don't sort out this will become issue, because the kind of movement is going on and people are concerned about, and at least NextG is very concerned about all these things. So we have to take care of that. Next. Yeah. This is also very important, which is I think people have already mentioned. It's a totally protected market. It's a trade barrier is there in terms of 40% plus duties. In fact, Kevin was telling about 40% to 160% duty. But mostly you can't have any competitiveness if some country is imposing 40% of the duty, because that's not the margin anybody is getting in dairy business. So it will be impossible. It's just way to say to no to any import, right? So basically we are not opening any door, and then because of that, you have all this mess we are talking about, high cost and all these things, because people are not exposed to competition that way. Otherwise people will do something, and maybe in future they will be more efficient in terms of cost, competitiveness, and quality also. Certification is big issue. Clearances are big issue when you import it. Sometimes shelf life issues are there, because there is a lot of quarantine period, then clearances and customs and all these things. So even import is not very comfortable situation in India. I would say cheese is potential market, and that's why if you see that some cheese companies, they have entered into India. Cheese is potential market because consumption of cheese is increasing. As you can see, if anybody is visiting India, consumption of cheese is increasing. So importing itself is not a very good solution, because still in cheese also high duty are there. Rennet type is also very important, because in India people expect that it has to be from vegetarian source. As far as rennet is concerned, is not the animal source. So that also becomes a kind of a hindrance when we are importing any cheese, because then you have to mention that it is through the rennet is through non-vegetarian source, and you have to make the some marking and all these things. This has a different religious aspect of getting the thing export. We have a very good gourmet cheese market, which is now very big market now coming up, and people have started understanding what is gourmet cheese, what is exotic cheese, and not is just like same processed cheddar slice in cubes. Now people know what is Edam, what is Gouda, what is Emmental, what is Brie, Blue, whatever, all this kind of cheese. So this is a market where import is has good potential, provided we sort it out of the other things. Whey derivatives also going is a good market, as we don't produce much cheese in India, processed cheese and all. So as compared to other countries, so we don't have that kind of whey derivatives in India, because to get whey you have to produce cheese. So this is also growing market, but this is that's why all the whey powders and WPC and all these things, they are imported in India, which is post nutrition what you are about. And the company where I'm working right now is Parag. They make Avatar, sports nutrition brand. It's only Indian brand which is doing very good in Indian market as far as this thing is concerned. We have, as Kevin was talking about, we can have collaboration, we can have some partnership, we can have technology transfer, collaboration, as we talk about JVs potential in the cheese and value-added protein products. So this kind of, I think, is important. Somebody wants to really enter into Indian dairy market, and understanding the details and nuances of the Indian dairy market. So one thing is, I would say, very important, which I am going to say, India is a very high volume market, and it is a very low margin. Even if you take value added also, it's not very high margin. EBITDA level will be 6-7%, and then that is the best case scenario. Of course, people start improving it. Liquid milk, which is 50% of the market, as I told, it's 3%, 4% EBITDA. So basically, when an MNC enters into India, so they have a mindset that EBITDA should be 10%, or it should be 12%. It should be value added only. This doesn't work, and perhaps some people have really failed to understand that, and they have left. In fact, this is very important, that when we talk about Indian dairy market, let's talk about the total profitability in absolute dollars or rupees or euros, because the mass consumption is there. People, if you want to sell liquid milk, there is a big liquid milk market, maybe with a small EBITDA, but still you can earn a lot of money in milk. So this is what I would say, that we MNC mindset we have to remove, and then we really enter into the market with the proper mindset, where low margin, high volume, high value growth, and good growth rate in coming future. So this is what we can have long-term strategy. Yogurt is now picking market. Epigamy is doing well with the collaboration of Danone. Protein shakes, immunity builder products, these all can be made if there's some company really wants to do, along with liquid milk. Again, I'm repeating that. If somebody is saying only only I will do yogurt, and so this mistake was done by Danone. We cannot have sustain only on yogurt or protein shakes and all this. Yeah. So this is what.
Yes.
Yeah. Can you go to next, which is my last slide? Yeah. So I would say that all the things what I have told still there is a good potential even for export and import both. Collaboration, partnership, joint venture, or maybe working with the Indian companies. I totally agree with Kevin when talking about the Indian players like Abbott, Mondelez, Domino's, Subways. These are the very high growth company in India now, which consumes lot of dairy as an ingredient, and they are really having a very big, I would say, requirement of a very high quality dairy products in India. If some company comes here and collaborates with that, I think it's a good proposition. Like we are talking about Schreiber Dynamics. So Schreiber is a sole supplier to McDonald's for the cheese, slice on slice. So this is already proven that nobody supplies in McDonald India except Schreiber. So Mondelez has one of the largest factory in the world in India for making chocolates. Abbott is doing wonderful in terms of Pediasure and nutrition and baby nutrition and old nutrition. So to support those people and their growth stories, there is a lot of potential to collaborate with the Indian companies and then start doing that. Quality, as I told, it has to be really on the next orbit. We have to understand, and I always propagate why we are talking about export quality or domestic quality. Our domestic quality should be such a way so that it meets the export standards. And that kind of mindset, until it is there, we will not able to crack the export business. Our internal, we have to internalize the quality as export quality, even if we are not exporting. That is what I want to say. I think we need to have daily export promotion zones where there is some kind of ecosystem is there, where somebody is able to supply best quality milk to the companies, or the companies have some ecosystem to get that best quality milk. The everything in terms of design, infrastructure, hygiene, sanitation, R&D, and all this thing can be done. And then this is certified export zone. From there, any country can be having confidence that from this zone, I will get the best quality product from India. So I think this is a little bit more, I think, futuristic. Wish list, I would say. And cost, of course, we have to be very, very crucial. We have to be, I think it's the biggest barrier today. If we don't control our costs, forget about export. It's not possible, because world is gone into different kind of efficiency. Of course, I repeatedly say that government policies on export has to be very clear. Export has to be encouraged, because I tell that uh, if we have to really flourish Indian dairy industry, export should have one of the major portion, not major, but some considerable portion of the total dairy business, to really stabilize Indian domestic market. Otherwise, it is very, very difficult, because if one day you export, another day you don't export, it doesn't way that work. And if you kill the export market, then Indian farmers, they are really sufferers, because they don't get the price when the milk is at a higher level in India. Then we are talking about RCP versus export. That's again is I'm talking about the Indian government policy, where we don't want to encourage to dairy product to come into India, and we want to export, so it will never happen. We have to be at a level playing field. Tariff barrier versus free market. So we have one time we're talking about free market, and we want to export some other Indian agriculture commodity, but we want tariff barrier in dairy. It doesn't match, it doesn't gel, it doesn't synchronize. Sustainability, I told, it has to be in the top of the agenda. And I would say 10% of the export of the total Indian dairy, what we are doing, has to be there to stabilize local fluctuation and give the stable domestic price milk to the farmers, which will ensure that milk production in India is consistent, stable, and we are at the right path of the dairy business in India. So this is what my overall take on the international business opportunities. Opportunities are there. People have done good job. Lactalis has taken three companies here, and some failures are also there. Fortera tried twice. They could not make it. Danone came here. They tried with the Western mindset. with selling only yogurt, not selling other products. So they failed, and now they have to do the joint venture with the yogurt company only. Some cheese companies have come in India, which are not doing a consumer cheese, but they are doing some kind of institutional cheese. Savencia is doing, basically institutions into Domino's and other things. Some yogurt company has come collaborating with Heritage, but yogurt is not that mature market today in India. So still, it's all learning what we all can have. Prashant and Kevin both have said that it's not a short-term market. You have to invest, you have to burn, you have to slow and focus way you can do this. So I think all said done, if we really work on the points, what all of us have, discussed, I think it's a good market, and in future, a lot of success stories will be there. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Rahul sir. It was really great presentation, and like thanks a lot for walking us through with the journey of the down and the midstream. And now it's time for us to go to the upstream. This is where we are going to have Sanjeev Srivastava sir talk about the kiranas. I'm very curious to see, because like at the end of the day, the product that we produce, the milk that we are producing, that has to be sold and sold into market, and this is where actually the his expertise comes in. And a lot of businesses which struggle is actually in the upstream. So, sorry, in the downstream. So, Sanjeev Srivastava, sir, over to you.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Prashant. Prashant, let me know if you can see the screen.
Not yet.
Can you present from your end? I think I'm having a problem over here.
I can do that, yes.
Yeah. So I think while Prashant puts up the presentation, two big takeaways from what Rahulji and Kevin talked about. I think the one big thing which Kevin talked about is India is too big a market to ignore. We just can't ignore India now. And what Rahulji talked about was the simple fact, apart from all the illuminating things which he talked about, is the fact that it's an industry for the long haul. Okay. And in this presentation, what I'm going to try and cover is the upstream, which also has to kind of work in concert with the back end as well as the procurement and production. So can we go to the next slide, Prashant? So we'll talk about certain trends, which are kind of shaping up the industry. And this is more from a holistic consumer perspective, which incorporates, the entire food and beverage sector, including the dairy products. So like we've heard in the presentations which Kevin and Rahulji gave, is that dairy is an industry which is growing stably. And what we're seeing also is that all products within the dairy spectrum are bound to grow given the times to come. You're going to have milk, which Rahulji also talked about, that the fact that you cannot do dairy products beyond just in isolation, you'll have to also look at milk. And milk as such, despite a very heavy base, is also going to be growing in the coming times. We're also going to have traditional value-added products as well as emerging value-added products. And what are traditional value-added products? It is what we Indians typically use in our daily consumption, like ghee, paneer, butter, curd, etc. And emerging value-added products, which could be cheese, yogurt, ice creams. Now, over here, if you look at it from a perspective, the growth is going to come in from multiple ways. You're going to see penetration in the organized sector. We've heard about Rahulji talking about, the unorganized sector, how it's kind of so huge, and the fact that the organized sector is moving into that space. We're also going to see consumption increasing, and we'll talk a little bit more about all of this in the next few slides. Apart from the fact that you're going to see inflation in the coming times also. So all of this is going to lead to a value growth in terms of the entire space. The interesting thing which came about in a recent household consumption expenditure survey was the fact that milk and milk products today are the single most bought item by households. Now, this is if you kind of look at it beyond, beverages, refreshments, and processed foods, which have been clubbed by the study into one composite group. If you were to break it up, my assumption is that milk and milk products would be the singular largest, household consumption product. Okay. Now, what's going to also happen, while we haven't talked too much about it, the growth is going to happen at home as well as out of home. You are Rahulji talked about briefly, the whole fact of the larger QSRs, kind of being there in India and also consuming to a great extent in collaboration with dairies within the country. Can we go to the next slide, Krishna? So one thing is that while milk is growing robustly and it forms the bedrock of the whole industry, we're also going to be seeing value-added products. Now, whether we call it traditional or emerging, we're going to see that kind of growing in the coming times. And a lot of reasons which is going to lead to the growth of the overall dairy sector is the simple fact that there's going to be economic growth for a larger consumer base and urbanization. Okay, you're going to be still seeing a lot of influx from the rural markets or rural centers to the urban centers purely for economic reasons. Dietary preferences are going to change as the earning capacity of a family increases. You're going to see a huge shift in the dietary preferences. And the last 3-4 years have taught us COVID has been really harsh on every one of us. We've all realized the importance of taking health and wellness as a serious thing. And like the global countries, we want to see within India also a huge demand for products which are tuned towards health and wellness. Dairy or milk in itself is considered as a composite product, a product which kind of connotes a lot of health and wellness. And this is kind of a product which is ripe to kind of capture this particular segment of the consumer segment. What's also happening, which is very interesting and which we'll talk a little bit more in the upcoming slides, is the whole retail ecosystem. The retail ecosystem obviously is changing continuously and at a much faster pace compared to the earlier times. Today, what's also happening is that digitization as well as technology have come to the forefront in terms of helping this whole retail ecosystem evolve and offer many more opportunities, for brands to reach out to the market. Plus, we've also talked about quality, how quality is so important. And the pressure which it will put on the Indian dairy system, obviously, is the whole fact that consumers are going to be asking very clearly as to whether one particular product within the dairy category is actually taking care of all aspects of the quality parameters. The other thing which is happening is there is a continued interest in new products, in the entire food and beverage space, including the dairy space. So while today the whole value-added products, if I were to say, is skewed towards the traditional value-added dairy products, we're going to also see the emerging value-added products or the newer products like, let's say, yogurt, cheese, ice creams. They will also kind of continue to grow within the country. Can we go to the next slide? So this is something which Kevin has already talked about in terms of the GDP growth. It tracks the GDP over the last lot of years, and more particularly in the recent past, if you see, India's GDP growth rate is amongst the top 5 economies. Okay, it's kind of exceeded that of the US, China, Germany, and Japan, and it's kind of projected that India will continue to grow at a robust growth rate. Okay, the forecast for 24 is at about 6%. Whereas if you look at the other emerging and the developed economies, it's obviously a sub 6%. So clearly, from a perspective of the overall GDP growing, it's going to be robust, number one. Number two, it's going to allow for a lot of categories within the consumption space to kind of grow. And this is where dairy in itself, given the holistic nature of this product, would take a lot of advantage as a result of it. Yeah, Prashant, let's go to the next one. Now, let's pause over here and look at it. During the presentations, we also realized, Rahulji made a simple calculation where he talked about the number of the population of the country multiplied by, the milk potential. But if you were to break up India, there is definitely, and I'm using a recent research, which maybe some of you have read about it, is from Bloom, which talks about a simple fact. And this is something which is known for a long time, that India is simply not one country. There are many Indias, So you just can't be kind of looking at India at a top level and saying that, okay, so much of population multiplied by so much of consumption will lead to a potential market which is so big that we definitely need to be a part of it. India definitely has a lot of potential, but you need to kind of look at India in a very nuanced way. Look at India from maybe 3 lenses, where you could break it up into 3 bits, where the first 2 are the ones which could form your potential, target base when you're looking at it from an outside perspective. There is definitely the consuming class, which is as big as the Mexican economy. And there is what we call the aspirant class, which is as big as the Indonesian economy. Then there is a whole slew of population, which probably could be called as unmonetizable in the sense that you may be able to offer very basic products to them, but not so much on the value-added side because they don't have the propensity to spend. As simple as that. Because in terms of their earnings also, it's very limited. Okay. Now, most of you who are from India would be aware about Mr. Kishore Vyani. He has further broken up the India One, into three more subsegments, which are probably as big as Singapore, Mexico, and Poland, where clearly the mass of the consumption today happens. Okay, so this is one place which any brand or any organization looking at India from outside has to kind of look at it and kind of top it up with the products that they want to kind of come into India with, be it within the dairy space or the larger food and beverage space. You need to look at India from a perspective of who are the actual consumers who could be there for your set of products. As simple as that. And it's not going to be across the entire spectrum of the Indian population. It will have to be portions of that. And clearly, you'll have to have a way to reach out to those exact consumers rather than trying to do a carpet bombing across the entire nation. Yes, Prashant. Now, this is something just a recap in terms of various, global fund houses talking about and research agencies talking about the fact that the consumption class in India is growing. Okay. Now, if you're as a brand or as an organization, you're looking at India, you'll have to be kind of confident about the long-term growth story of India. It cannot be one where you kind of come in, and this the earlier speakers have also talked about, is the fact that you come in and look at it from a very, very short-term horizon. You'll have to give it probably a decade to actually reap the benefits of doing something within this particular country. Because the demographics, the whole GDP, everything kind of pans out in such a way that it's going to lead to an economy which is consistently growing, and the consuming class over here in this country is going to continuously grow. Yes, Prashant. Again, a repetition, but in a different way. There is going to be a steady growth in the per capita income across the country. May seem low, but when you aggregate over such a large population, it's a huge economy. Yes, Prashant. This is the interesting part, like when we talk about the consumption. Today, if you look at it from a perspective of, if you were to break up the consumption between, let's say, the basics, the food and grocery, as well as the discretionary spends, which a family may have, today as Indians, our spends are broadly towards necessities. Okay, we are trying to kind of make ends meet, trying to take care of the basics. Our discretionary spends are obviously on the lower side. Okay, currently, if you look at it, it's a 25% to a 75% more in favor of retail spends, which are tilted towards groceries. But unlike the other economies, even like, let's say, China or the US market. But the fact of the matter is, when you look at it from a perspective of a long-term horizon, the discretionary spends are kind of increasing. What does that kind of indicate? It indicates that the Indians are having more disposable incomes to spend beyond their household necessities, which is a reflection of what we talked about in the previous slides. Yes, Prashant. Okay, now I'm going to pause over here, and for any organization, or a brand wanting to enter into India or within the country also, the bigger challenge is that yes, you have a very robust backend, you have great production facilities, you're producing quality products, but how do you reach it out to the end in the consumer? The overall retail market, if you look at it, has evolved over the last few decades. Okay, where earlier a manufacturer or a brand would reach out to the consumer through typically what we call the mom and pop stores or the traditional trade or grocery stores. Today there is a plethora of options right in front of the consumer. Okay, right from the traditional trade, which comprises, even depending upon the category, about 80-85% of the retail market. There is what is the supermarkets or the modern trade, as we call it in our parlance, which contribute about 10 to 12% of the overall retail economy for food and grocery. And what's been developing over the last 7-8 years is the whole e-commerce platforms, where we started out with one player, and today this has kind of grown into a plethora of platforms wherein we are getting probably any and everything at the press of a button within probably 10 to 30 minutes. Okay. But the fact of the matter is today, still as a brand, there are limited ways to reach out to the consumer in a direct manner. We've seen how digitally native brands are reaching out to end consumers through their own websites or maybe through the marketplaces of the world. But that is still a small segment of the retail ecosystem. You still have to kind of go through the old-fashioned way of reaching out through stores, and that in itself is a huge challenge because there are a lot of intermediaries involved. So right from kind of having to produce your goods or storing it in your warehouse, you need to kind of give it to a distributor who will then further distribute or place the product into retail stores across the geographies which he kind of caters to. Okay, so in terms of managing the whole channel dynamics so as to ensure that your product reaches the consumer in exactly the same manner as you had thought about it is a very, very crucial challenge. And when you look at it from the construct of a dairy product, it becomes all the more critical, okay, because of the simple reason that dairy is a perishable product, most of it at least. And you need to kind of take care that the product, the manner in which you had planned it out to reach to the end consumer reaches out to her in that possible manner. So the whole supply chain over here becomes very critical and crucial in terms of reaching out the product to that end consumer. Yes, Prashant. Now, despite all of these challenges, one thing is a fact that the Indian retail ecosystem is expected to continue to grow at about 9 to 10% to reach about 2 trillion. Now, this is obviously for all products, including fashion and other spends which a consumer may have. But the fact of the matter is that the retail ecosystem over here in the country is very robust. Okay, and being able to reach out to the consumers will still mean that you'll have to go through that retail ecosystem in order to get your products to them. Yes, Prashant. Now, in connection with the previous slide, what's also very evident is that as the retail economy ecosystem will grow, you're going to see, couple this up, with a younger population, which is there in India. What is coming across, and this has been a study which was conducted across different markets within the Southeast Asian region, it was very evident that Indians as such are typically more open to new shopping experiences. And you're going to see this kind of percolate into their behaviors, which will in turn have an impact on how and what they tend to consume. So when brands kind of look at India, they'll have to look at it from a future perspective context also, that who's the population or which age group is the one which I'm going to be targeting to. Because end of the day, you'll need to kind of reach out products to them in the manner that they want it. Today, for example, I mean, there are enough anecdotes which I typically hear about is how the younger generation is refusing or not wanting to get into, the traditional trade stores and willing to probably just shop through the apps which are there on their phone. So the point is that as an Indian consumer, they're evolving. And tomorrow, maybe 10, 20 years later, you could have a habit or a mindset which is ingrained towards being more prone to kind of looking at newnessness, trying out different things, maybe even different brands, and in a manner which is more digitally enabled. Okay, so these are things which one as a brand, you need to kind of keep in mind when you start trying to address the Indian consumers. Can you go to the next one, Prashant? Okay, this is just a small perspective over here that today when you look at the whole today, India has been incorporating technology at every level of governance. Okay, now this is a very simple uh, presentation in terms of the overall population, how many of them are covered by Aadhaar, how many of them actually access digital payments to start making it. It speaks a lot about the fact that today digital or technology has started kind of affecting or being incorporated in normal individual consumers' everyday life. And this is something which you cannot kind of bypass today. So you'll have to look at this whole thing when you're trying to present a product or an offering to the end consumer. Next, please. We talked about the various retail formats which are there, which we had classified as traditional trade, modern trade, and the e-commerce platforms broadly, or the online space. What's going to happen thanks to all the digitization which is happening, and the younger generation as well as the larger population now becoming more open to trying out platforms which are online, you're going to see a shift which will start impacting the traditional trade retail ecosystem, where you'll have more brick and mortar stores kind of in an organized manner, where you can go and typically experience the products. You would also see a preference for online applications, which will in turn kind of impact the saliency of the traditional trade stores. And this is just a representation of the rise of the digital consumers, where while today's mature consumers who are using digital are limited, this is going to continue to be a growing base. The interesting part, if you see the bottom right-hand small table which is there, if we break up the retail ecosystem into 3-4 parts, the supermarkets, kirana stores, chemists, and the online shopping experience, what is very clear is that from a growth perspective, all of them are growing. And that leads me back to the slide which I talked about, the retail ecosystem kind of growing to become a huge one in India, which will offer opportunities for everyone. So two things are happening at a individual level in each of these channels, is that the growth in terms of the number of shopping occasions which a consumer has is continuing to rise. Okay, whereas the biggest growth is in terms of the online shopping, and the spends per trip are also increasing. So these two, when you combine, will present something which is beneficial for brands. Yes, Prashant. Next one. Thanks to all the digitization which is happening, you're going to see a proliferation of spends which are going to happen through e-commerce, and within this also you have a space known as the quick commerce space, which is emerging as a key channel, which is kind of allowing consumers to access products in the shortest possible time. And this has led to a lot of changes within the households also, where earlier there was a lot, and this is more so particularly in the bigger towns. Let me put it very clearly over here, where you're seeing shifts in terms of the monthly shopping basket, the the pantry, which used to be typically loaded at the beginning of the month, today is being broken up into multiple times, wherein you can get what you require as and when you require it, as simple as that. And what's this leading to is also the simple fact that groceries, food and beverage groceries, these are something which are seeing an uptake on these platforms. A lot of companies, also are reporting the fact that quick commerce is contributing to a greater salience in the total sales within the FMCG space. Now, this is one space which is going to be growing on the back of more number of active users in terms of how much they order, what is the order frequency, as well as how much are they ordering in each individual order. So all of this combined together is going to see the quick commerce space continue to grow. Now, as a brand, depending upon what you sell, this could be a great opportunity. I personally believe that, from a dairy perspective, which has to rely a lot on the cold chain infrastructure to reach out to consumers, this could be a great mechanism to reach out to consumers in the top 10 or 15 cities. Okay, because you're ensuring these players over here have a robust cold chain. They're able to kind of allow the consumer to access the product in the shortest possible time. Yes, Prashant. So all of these, are leading to shifts, wherein we're seeing an appetite for premium products by the Indian consuming class, and this has been widely reported by most of the FMCG companies, where they're reporting their higher value products kind of growing at a faster rate compared to the mass products. And this is happening across sectors, not just the food and beverage space. Yes, Prashant. The cold chain space also, while it's a work in progress and a lot of work is getting done, what I'd like to share over here is the fact that today, the entire storage, transportation, and final sales of the perishable products is kind of becoming more robust thanks to the improving cold chain infrastructure. So it's kind of allowing for products to remain good for consumption as per the best before declarations, which in turn leads to a better consumer experience and a continued preference for such kind of products. Now, what we've seen, and this is also basis past experience, is that the retail kirana stores, the small mom and pop stores, which didn't have the kind of capability to provide for a cold chain infrastructure, like let's say a simple fridge at their end. Uh, Today, what we are seeing, and this is a survey which was recently conducted by a entity called as Kirana Club, where they found that 66% of the retailers have a fridge at their store. This is a huge step up. Now, most of these refrigerators are from a perspective of storing beverages, but what I believe is that the dairy industry, which has a lot of cold chain products, could also benefit from this. Dairy beverages, milk, as simple products like this or curd, would definitely benefit from the growing infrastructure in the cold chain space. Yeah, Prashant. This is something which is well known. We've talked a lot about it, maybe across forums. Health and wellness is becoming all pervasive. So you cannot kind of think about a product which is not going to have some connotation of health and wellness within it. So we're looking at it more from a perspective of better nutrition when it comes to food and beverage, as well as dairy products. Consumers are increasingly taking health in their own hands. They're becoming very conscious, and thanks to the fact that today, you kind of have information at a fingertip, you can find out whether it's right, wrong. There's a lot of information coming in to tell people whether what they're consuming is good or bad for their health. So organizations and brands, when they kind of look at India, will have to realize that as a consuming class, this is one which is very well informed, okay? And they can find out anything at the press of a button, as simple as that. But yes, what is also increasingly evident is that they want to help them accomplish their wellness goals in addition to tasting good. Okay. So what are the opportunities which could be there in the F&B space, including dairy, natural and clean products? Okay. Backed with very credible claims, we'll see an interest in demand. Now, there's also this aspect that we hear about constantly, that can you kind of make products which are personalized for an individual? Well, that's still a long way off. You're definitely going to see mass personalization catering to consumer cohorts, who are interested in specific products. So you no longer have to kind of look at a very large segment or want a larger segment of people who start making or getting a right product for them. You could start with even a small cohort of people who have the similar needs and present a product to them. Digital is going to be the key enabler over here. And what I believe is that category lines will continue to blur. You will see a blurring of all of this happening in the coming decades. Yeah, Prashant. So what's happening is, given all of these things which are happening, we are seeing that there is an increasing valorization of dairy products, including traditional ones like curd. So if the market had been homogeneous, you would have probably had one type of curd, and I'm just using curd as an example over here. One type of curd selling across the country. The fact of the matter is that there are various variants of curd, maybe by the same manufacturer or brand, or by different brands, catering to different price points with different propositions. Okay. The fact is that all of them have found an addressable market which they're reaching out to and trying to grow their business. So there is a scope for people who are trying to grow even the traditional value added products also. Yeah, Prashant. And this is also emerging, for value added products like cheese. Paulji talked about the fact that cheese is okay. And this points in that direction that there are multiple players who have come into the space. Multiple types of cheeses at different price points to the end Indian consumer. Yes, Prashant. And also an emergence of products, focusing on health and nutrition. So there's a plethora of products which have come in to kind of address specific needs of certain consumer groups and trying to take it to a larger audience. Yeah, Prashant. In the end, I'd just say one thing, chaos in the world brings uneasiness, okay? But it also allows the opportunity for creativity and growth. So thank you for being patient and hearing me out in this presentation. Over to you, Prashant.
Thanks a lot, Sanjeev, for really interesting presentation, bringing us I think like our audience would have really found it very valuable to even see like what kind of product segments are seeing the growth and why they are even seeing the growth. And so now we are actually we have taken significant amount of our time during the presentation. We still have some time left for us where we would like to take some questions. Rahul sir, I have first question for you. Like while living in Europe, a lot of time people ask me, and I think like this is where I would like to get the answer from you and then from Kevin. People ask me, India is not behaving the way China behave. Western businesses see India more from a lens they see China. What is your take on that?
So if you're talking about the dairy business, between India and China, I see it's totally different. They understand it's a I told it's not a business here, it's a socio-economic model what we're talking about. This is not in China like that.
Mm-hmm.
And even the consumption pattern is totally different.
Yeah.
The kind of the way the people see dairying as a business in India is totally different the way other part of the people say. There is a lot of mythological and I would say religious aspects are there. We are we're talking about dairying as a livelihood rather than business. See, we talk about the dairying as a India dairying as a business, but you talk about the farmer, how he takes dairying is a small two cattle per farmer. 97% of the farmers, they have two or three cattle. So if you talk them, what is your definition of business? You are in dairy business. Then he will not say it's a business. For him, it's or her, it's for livelihood. It is regular income. The market is growing in such a way that there is no demand elasticity. Means whatever you produce, you are able to sell it at good rate. You go to any Indian village, it's a totally free market economy. There will be five private players, two cooperative. The farmer has liberty to go into and do that in spite of he's having only two cows. So here the definition of dairy is totally different versus China. This is what it's an apple and orange comparison. This is nothing.
Yeah.
You can't.
I think like very well explained. Kevin,
Yeah.
how do you see it living in Europe and like having worked in both the markets? Kevin, you are on mute.
All right. China for a long time had before 2008 had a smallholder dairy culture. China changed after the melamine crisis in 2008, and the government had a much bigger impact on how dairy developed. So they went for the large 10,000 cow herds, 20,000 cow herds, and controlled it a lot more. And I don't think that's possible in India. Cow is sacred in India, and culling cows from 10,000 cow herds just isn't acceptable to the population. So I think the way in which Raul's absolutely right. I think the way in which people see the industry is very different in India. I think if you go back to the days of Dr. Verghese Kurian, the father of the co-ops in India, it was really a social movement as much as a business movement. And I think that is still the case in the way the industry is developing. Unfortunately, it can't continue to be the case. I think as you get continued urbanization, India is drastically short of green fodder at the moment. And as climate change begins to bite in the northern parts of India, you saw Delhi getting to 50 degrees last year. I think finding a way of producing the needs of the market with less cows is going to be an imperative. And somehow India has to find its way through consolidation and modernization, professionalization of the industry. And I think that's going to happen, but it's going to happen in a culturally sensitive way. And it's going to happen in an Indian way, not in a way that the rest of the world dictates.
Thanks, Kevin. Sanjeev, like next question to you. We are seeing that Indian consumers interaction, the way Indian consumer interacts with milk is changing, and it has changed significantly over the time. So it was pretty much more liquid. Now they are consuming through yogurt, through cheeses. What is the foundational reason for this westernization of diet or the way they are changing? What do you think? Is it just the westernization of diet or there are other factors to it as well?
I don't think that it would be just a westernization of the diets. Okay. End of the day, products beyond milk also have a proposition. Okay. brands, when they kind of present a product to a consumer, they are kind of marketing it in a much better way compared to the earlier times. So there's finding a wider audience and a greater acceptance for that. See, end of the day, it's not about an Indian or Western diet. It's from a perspective that what does the consumer believe is a right diet for them? Okay, so if you're presenting any product, be it from the dairy space or the larger food and beverage space, and you present a rationale for that, there is going to be some bias for it who will take to it. Dairy, like I said earlier, also has all the connotations of health and nutrition. So when you present something from that space with a valid reason and market it well, there are going to be consumers for it.
Awesome. Rahul, sir, next question to you. As you see that we are producing more cheese, like we are consuming more cheese, definitely you also discussed about Avatar being one of the leading brands in India for when it comes to whey. What is your opinion about like how will Indian production system change, like processing system change in the coming next 5 years?
Yeah, so basically, if I take an example of one of the fastest growing category, which I could see in one of the slides, is a double digit growth, 20%, 22%, 23%, something like that, flavored milk, cheese, and all these things. So basically, if I talk about one of the fastest growing category is cheese, because the kind of consumption of cheese has increased in India is phenomenal. Where in Amul, when I was in Amul, there was a study done in 2001, and the study conclusion was that only 1% of Indian in 2001, they have ever tasted cheese. They were not consumer. They have ever tasted cheese. Now today you can understand after 20 years the way the cheese is consumed in India. And when we are talking about cheese, it completely changed the dynamics of the, including from procurement, the quality of milk, the type of antibiotics, because you need antibiotic free milk for cheese to make proper yield and economics, and then proper quality of cheese, the investment, the technology, the whole gamut changes when you're talking about from liquid milk to ghee to you are started making cheese, and then you're talking about to compete in the market to the international player, how you're valorizing whey, and then whey has a different scheme where talking about the different value addition of the whey in terms of not only demineralized whey powder, you're talking about whey protein concentrate, WPI, and all this thing, and lactose and a lot of other things you're talking about. So what I mean to say that if you see in India last 10 years, the maximum investment people have done, including cooperatives in cheese. Many new companies have come in cheese. Milky Mist has come in cheese. Paras is now putting a plant in cheese. The KMF, which is a cooperative in Nandini, cooperative of Karnataka, they have put up a cheese plant. People have added capacities on Amul. There are several district unions who those started cheese. So there is a good investment also in cheese. And I'm not saying that in other products also, like flavored milk is now, because this is not a very high technology game. But as far as cheese is concerned, people have upgraded their milk procurement system, the testing system, and even capex in cheese and high end varieties of cheese. And this also takes a lot of money to capex to pack the cheese, in terms of modified atmospheric packaging and all. So it has taken that kind of investment in cheese now. Yeah.
Thank you, also. Sanjeev, the next question to you. As an international business which is trying to enter the Indian market, what is the biggest challenge that they face, or you in your previous position faced while you were trying to reach the last mile?
I think, Prashant, one of the biggest challenges is from a perspective of pricing. And when even Bella had entered into India, pricing was a huge concern. We were at a 40% premium compared to the market leader. Now, one way to look at it was to say that, okay, you're at a premium, you can't sell. The other way was to kind of provide value for that premiumness, as simple as that. So a couple of things which we obviously did was to offer value instead of the premium pricing which was there, get the brand accepted by more people by conveying something which is truly innovative and new for the end consumer. Secondly, what we also did, Prashant, was to try and see if we could grow the category. Okay, today the category obviously continues to remain, restricted. Rahul sir also just talked about it. So the intention was that could we kind of make cheese accessible to more people, particularly when you look at it from going top to bottom. And one of the things which we tried out was cheese in a sachet at 13 cents or 10 rupees, Indian rupees, which we took into the traditional trade retail market within the Mumbai markets. And what we realized as a result of that introduction was that more retailers, typically retailers and consumers tend to hesitate when they try to approach a product like cheese. They started taking to this innovative cheese product. The second bigger important thing was that it helped, move the new trialists to take on more products which were more a higher price, like upwards of 100 rupees. Once they were convinced that cheese is, a good product and can be had on a daily basis. So now these are things which will obviously pan out over a few years. It cannot, automatically doing a small experiment for a limited time will result in the category going. But I believe that if more players are able to do this, then you will see the category growing. So these were things which kind of helped us gain faster and a better acceptance, despite the fact that we were at a premium pricing.
Thanks a lot, Sanjeev sir. We are almost there. We are reaching the time. Kevin, I have last question with you from you. We hear a lot of reports and opinions that EU market, EU production might shrink because of the Natura 2000 or other environmental factors. What do you think? What role Indian dairy can play in filling up some of the gaps that might be created by the European dairy?
Well, I think world milk production is challenged in terms of growth. If you look at Europe, then yes, sustainability will put a cap on how much growth there can be here, and probably we're looking at just productivity growth from genetics rather than actually investment in new milk production. The same is going to be true of New Zealand, where dairy competes with tourism, and adding more cows risks sustainability there. I think you'll get quite a lot of growth out of North America, probably about 1.5–2% growth over the coming years. But if you look at world milk dairy demand, a lot of that demand is growing in the tropics, in Africa, and across Asia. And I think India, if it can get its product to a level that exports are demanded, then there's a large market for India to export to, certainly. And of course, India's got a huge diaspora in terms of its population around the world, which are demanding those type of Indian dairy products, which are best made in India, the ghees, the paneers. And I think there's a huge ready market out there, and we're seeing companies like Amul begin to explore that.
Thanks a lot, Kevin. I think we have come to the end of our session. I would like to thank all our speakers, Kevin, Rahul sir, and Sanjeev sir. And I would also like to thank our audience for their patience and joining the session. I am pretty sure that there are so many questions that we have not been able to take up, but I'm pretty sure that I'll be taking each of them to our speakers and trying to get you the answer. If you have any further questions, we have dropped our email in the chat box. Please feel free to write us, and we will get back to you with this. And I would like to thank everyone of you again, and see you in our next session in coming months.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you, Sanjeev. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you all. Thank you, everyone.